You're just Mom's husband. Don't make this weird." Tyler said it without looking up, like he was scanning a barcode, and the price came out 0. Megan smirked into her iPad, the blue light turning her face to angles, the Denver sun washing the kitchen tile like nothing mattered except the next notification. The cereal box stood open and bleeding flakes. The dishwasher blinked end like it was announcing more than a cycle. I didn't argue. I rinsed a bowl, wiped a ring of milk, and signed the field trip form. No one left for me, but I found anyway, because that's how the house stayed upright, me catching what was falling. I'm Mark, 45, operations manager for a heating and cooling outfit that keeps strip malls warm and data centers cold. My job looks like checklists and gaskets, but what it really is? Things break. I make them unbroken. 2 years ago, I married Julia and took on her kids. Tyler, 17, all shoulders and sarcasm. Megan, 15, eyeliner and design tutorials into a life that already held my 2. Ben, 13, percussion and politeness. Ava, 10, notebooks and brave questions. The address is a modest 3-bedroom in southwest Denver with a sagging fence, a mountain magnet collage on the fridge, and a mortgage that I cover because I have the steadier paycheck. Love here measures out in monthly debits. I pay Tyler's gas. When E85 is cheaper, I text him the difference. He responds with a thumbs-up bubble that costs him nothing. I cover the insurance for their used cars, 2 dented Loyals I keep running with scraped knuckles and a stack of O'Reilly receipts. I cover the family phone plan, 5 lines screaming unlimited, and the Wi-Fi that Megan treats like air. I contribute to future tuition because I'm an optimist who believes in accounts more than promises. Megan's design courses? Adobe student license, Skillshare renewal, a summer camp up in Boulder that pronounces scholarship like a myth. I pay it. I pay all of it. I fold the confirmations into a folder labeled House, because if you don't label the work, it disappears. The push-out didn't happen one night. It sedimented. At school, the kids introduced me as Mom's husband, the words arranged like an apology for my presence. If I added stepdad, the air stiffened. Tyler's friend asked once, "So you're like, married to her?" And Tyler laughed first, and the laugh did more damage than the question. At home, disrespect arrived in safe shapes. Megan rolled her eyes at the dishes and called it humor. Tyler answered a direct request with, "Mom said later," as if Julia were a badge he could flash to skip authority. Guests laughed because people do when the target doesn't fire back. Julia smoothed things over. Soft words, quick smile, a hand on my arm that meant, "Please don't escalate." Smoothing is cheaper up front. Long term, it costs you your purchase history. Our command center is a whiteboard edged with gold washi tape. It absorbs everything. Orthodontist appointments, car registrations, Ben's drumline nights, Ava's school fair. I add due dates in block letters, then Julia drifts through with a pretty marker. Pilates, Wine W. Terra, a heart, like we're playing different positions on the same team. When a pink envelope screamed, "Past due" for Tyler's hatchback insurance, I paid it at midnight and stuck the receipt under a magnet shaped like Mount Elbert. When Megan's camp emailed additional materials fee to secure her spot, I secured it. She posted a story that read, "Thanks, Mom," over a montage of sketchbooks. I recognized the charge on my card before I recognized myself in the family narrative. On my nights with Ben and Ava, the table looks like a table. 4 plates, steam, small jokes. They help by habit. Forks stacked, chairs tucked, lights clicked off. Ava announces the week's spelling list and then pretends she hates how easy it is. Ben offers the next day's weather for his bike ride, which is basically him telling me he'll be responsible. When Tyler and Megan are home those same nights, the house splinters. Door clicks. A rectangle of light under their rooms like a runway for excuses. If I knock and say family dinner, a 1 sec floats out and never lands. Ben asked me once, quietly, "Do we still count as a family if we're the only ones at the table?" I said, "We count wherever we are." And I meant it. But I heard the thread snap somewhere I couldn't see. Julia is good, which is how this kind of disrespect stays fed. She kisses my shoulder and tells me, "You make this house run." And I do. She's a nurse, 12-hour shifts, tender eyes, the kind of woman you want in every room where pain shows up late. But when Tyler calls me bro in that flat tone, she winces, smiles quick, and says, "Hey, be nice." Like niceness is a costume he might throw on for a laugh. When Megan records a TikTok about older people who love rules, Julia snorts and says, "At least she's creative." Kindness without correction is a sugar high with a crash you pay for later. I keep 4 529s because it felt fair. 2 for mine, 2 for hers, the future a level surface I could build on. I told myself that one day respect would arrive as naturally as tuition notices. But cheap respect is a coupon that never scans. The more I covered, the more invisible I became. Tyler shifted into reverse before I finished explaining how to back out without tearing the trash cans. Megan's "uh-huh" could flatten a paragraph into static. The family text thread, Miller Grant Crew, optimistic hyphen, buzzed, gas. Tut, links to shoes labeled school. Sunsets from Julia. Screenshots from me of payments. Proof stamped in pixels that I existed. Ben chimed in with a drumline video. Ava posted hot chocolate with whipped cream like snow. Tyler replied, "Nice." Megan didn't. First snow came early, thick and muffling. I lay on cardboard under Tyler's car, trouble light hot on my cheek, showing him the difference between "it squeaks" and "the belt's glazed." He nodded once, scrolled twice. When I slid out, cold wrist, sore back. He said, "You get that, or should I call Mom?" He called it a joke. My laugh sounded like a hinge that needed lube. There's a particular shame in watching yourself be edited out of stories you paid to produce. The Booster Club knew me as the guy who organized rides, but Tyler told his coach, "This is Julia's guy." And the coach shook my hand harder than necessary, eyes soft in that way people get when they spot a quiet bruise. At a Saturday barbecue, I grilled in a beanie while neighbor couples performed marriage on the patio. Megan narrated a ring light demo to 3 friends, her voice precise and kind to strangers in ways I hadn't seen all week. When I asked Tyler to rinse his plate, he cupped a hand around his mouth and called, "Mom, are we doing dishes?" The room laughed. Julia squeezed my arm. "It's fine, I'll get it," she said, which translated as, "Please don't make this a moment." Moments become habits when you let them. After the last guest left, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and old punchlines. I sorted the mail on the counter no one else cleans. Insurance, phone, 2 tuition brochures, a gym auto-renew I'd forgotten existed. I opened everything with a utility knife and the patience I save for objects that can't pretend to be offended. Pay, confirm, file. I wrote a note on an envelope. Tyler, split gas? And left it where he stages his keys. In the morning, it was gone, replaced by a post-it. Busy. Later. Later is a place where respect doesn't live. At school the next week, a parent volunteer type gave me the weather report. "They don't call you their stepdad," she said, soft. "They say, Mom's husband." I nodded like she'd predicted snow in February. The hallway smelled like pine sol and ambition. I thought about the way our house keeps secrets in the open, the silent give of the budget, the 2 cars that run because I crawl under them, the phone plan that makes eye rolls possible. The tells of a quiet push-out are boring. Your name falls off the emergency contact list you hand-delivered. Your email stops receiving the updates you set up. You arrive at family movie night and find 2 separate screens and 4 sets of headphones. Your chair at the table is pushed aside for a cardboard box labeled Megan Portfolio. The fridge notes stop saying, "Thanks," and start saying nothing. The gratitude economy collapses slowly, and then, all at once. Still, I show up. The curse of being useful is people believe you can't stop. I packed Megan's camp trunk with labeled tape, kitchen, chargers, sketchbooks, because organization is love you can see. She said, "Cool," without raising her eyes. I stood at a touch line in Commerce City while Tyler subbed in for 8 minutes and yelled at a ref like the world would end if a throw-in went the other way. The wind knifed through my jacket, and I thought about men I know who measure fatherhood in miles and receipts, who carry a house like a yoke until someone mistakes them for the furniture attached to it. That night, I ordered 2 pizzas and set plates, even though I knew we'd end up collecting them cold. Julia told a story from the hospital about a patient who brought orchids for the night shift. Megan filmed her ring light review at the breakfast bar. Tyler FaceTimed a friend with the volume up like the rest of us were extras. When I asked Megan to mute the light for dinner, she looked past me. "Do I have to?" she asked Julia, as if my voice were a draft that needed weather stripping. "Just this once," Julia told me, sweet and surgical, and the LED hummed through our pasta while the light made everyone look a little unreal. Later, I replaced the AC filter, set the thermostat curve for the cold snap, cleared the lint trap no one else believes is a fire hazard, and laid out Ben's old gloves for Tyler in case pride needed a disguise. I printed the DMV renewal slips and paper-clipped them by car. I wiped the whiteboard and rewrote the week. I slept like men sleep when their bodies are receipts and their hearts are audits. Morning. Tyler popped a soda with the kind of flourish you learn from TV. He crossed the kitchen in socks that slid and said it again. Casual, final. Like reading an instruction label aloud to a room that already knew. "You're just Mom's husband. Don't make this weird." I didn't. Not yet. I put the cap in the trash, I rinsed the glass, and I counted each small act like loose change, wondering how long I could keep paying for a story I wasn't allowed to tell. The picnic was supposed to be simple: folding tables, paper plates, and the kind of plastic forks that surrender under potato salad. Ben had a new drone he'd saved for with lawn mowing money. Ava packed clementines and sticky notes for a scavenger hunt. Julia made pasta salad in a silver bowl that photographs well. Tyler and Megan brought appetites and the familiar performance. By noon, the park's grass was the exact green that makes people behave like a commercial. By 2, my value had been priced out loud. "You're nobody to us," Tyler said, grin flat, voice pitched for the crowd. "Stay out of it." Megan laughed into her phone like there was an audience meters away who needed subtitles. We were in a Denver park with views that make realtors rich. Mountain shoulders to the west, families tracing loops around a path lined with dog bags that nobody remembers to refill. Our group was big. Julia's sister and her family, 2 of her nurse friends, the neighbor with the loud snowblower, and a rotation of teens orbiting the snacks table. I arrived early with Ben and Ava to stake a shady spot and assemble the pop-up tent that always needs one more hand than it gets. Julia arrived late, carrying flowers for the table like we were staging a catalog. Tyler and Megan drifted in at the convenience of kids who never worry about parking because someone else's patience keeps the world soft. Ben's drone was like a promise. He'd unboxed it on my couch with surgical reverence, reading the manual out loud as if the words would earn him flight hours. I set a boundary: park only, clear sky, line of sight. And he nodded like people do when they intend to keep trust banked. He showed Ava how to connect the controller. She made a checklist with her sticky notes: battery, wings, props, space, permission. We launched it twice above the soccer field, air bright and forgiving. Everyone ate. I kept the grill steady and the cooler topped up. "Mark, you're the logistics king," someone said, and I smiled because that's the only crown some of us get. While I flipped brats, Julia arranged napkins into triangles and told a story about a patient who'd taught the whole ward to waltz. Tyler held court near the picnic table. Megan filmed a looping clip of sunlight through the tent. Her phone made a sound whenever someone approved of her life. The fuse burned from both ends. Megan forgot to help with setup. Tyler wandered through with his cleats still on, dirt on the table bench, and when I said, "Shoes off the seat, bud," he didn't hear me so loudly that everyone heard him not hearing me. Julia shot me a warning look that meant it's fine, not now. Her smoothing hand hovered over the bowl like she could polish the air. Ben asked Tyler, careful, respectful, if he wanted to try the drone. Tyler shrugged, took the controller without meeting Ben's eyes, and made the drone jump like a fish on a bad line. He climbed it up, whipped it sideways, laughed when Ava squealed. I said, "Take it easy, it's new." The way you say "break" to someone drifting toward a curb. Tyler looked at Megan, then at his friends, and switched to louder. "Relax, man. It's a toy." His friend smiled, the type of smile that tells you they don't pay for their own data. I stepped closer, low voice. "Hey, give it back to Ben if you're not going to be careful." That's when the smirk arrived. The kind that isn't a face so much as a verdict. "You're nobody to us. Stay out of it," he said, and the sentence clanged against the metal table, and cutlery paused mid-air, and a nurse friend exhaled an "oh." Megan added, "Seriously, you're just Mom's husband," as if she needed to close the circle. Break. I felt it like a tire blowout. One instant fine, the next you're steering on rims. The worst part wasn't Tyler's volume. It was the way heads turned toward Julia like jurisdiction lived in her pockets. She reached for me with that palm-down gesture I'd learned to read as both apology and leash. "It's okay," she said to the group, not to me. "They're just being silly." Silliness is cheap cover for cruelty. Everybody accepted the discount. Tyler banked the drone low and fast across the field, showing off for boys who measured worth in risks they didn't have to pay for. Ben stepped forward once, then checked my face like a compass. I shook my head. Gentle. Wait. Because I still believed we could land this with minimal damage. The drone kissed a tree. We could have recovered. But Tyler clipped the throttle and drilled it into the grass. Plastic snapped with that helpless sound things make when the warranty is still warm. Ben's mouth opened, closed. Ava's checklist fluttered from her hand. Megan announced, fully delighted. "Oops, guess Dad's rules didn't help," weaponizing the word Dad in a way that made my ribs feel hollow. Tyler held the controller out to me like a citation. "Tell your kid to chill, bro." My kid. The phrase fixed me in place. Ben swallowed hard, then crouched beside the drone and lifted it like a bird with a broken wing. The front arm hung loose. The camera gimbals twitched like a tiny animal shivering. He said, very quiet, "It's okay. which is what decent children say when it is not okay, and they're trying to protect the adult who deserved better protection. Around us, the picnic reanimated, because awkward is heavier than potato salad. The neighbor made a joke about pilot error. Someone put on music too loud. A dad in a fishing hat offered tape like tape could fix dignity. Tyler walked away before I could hand him responsibility. Megan filmed Ben kneeling, caption ready. I saw Ben clock the phone, and what dignity was left in him pulled both shoulders back. I picked up the controller. I stared at the broken quad. I could feel Julia's kindness moving toward me like a blanket I didn't want. I set the controller on the table. I looked at Ben. "We'll order the parts," I said, calm, even. "We'll rebuild it." He nodded, eyes bright with a kind of pain that later grows into resolve if it's not poisoned by lies. Then I stood up straight and let a decision arrive. The best decisions don't shout. They stop enabling. On the grass, I called the kids together, mine and Julia's, then the adults, which is something I almost never do. My voice stayed even, the way it does when I shut down a rattling rooftop unit in January. "Listen up," I said. "Respect and responsibility go together. Without the first, there won't be the second." Tyler rolled his eyes so dramatically, I half expected contact lenses to fall out. Megan's phone hovered. Julia touched my elbow. "Mark." "Later," she whispered. "Not now." She meant not here, not in front of witnesses. But witnesses are exactly how truth finds purchase. I didn't lecture. I itemized quietly in a voice the wind couldn't steal. "Here's what ends today," I said. "I am done being the free backend for people who say I'm nobody. You want privileges, you match them with respect. You want independence, you carry weight." I held Tyler's gaze just long enough to register that he heard me. I looked at Megan's screen and chose not to care. I nodded to Ben and Ava. Signal received. Dad's calm is real. Julia tried to fold the moment into something softer. "He doesn't mean it like that," she offered to the group, a bridge to nowhere. I met her eyes. "I mean it exactly," I said. Not loud, not sharp, just final. The air in the tent changed. People busy-talked themselves away. That's fine. Boundaries always cost you a few spectators. Tyler said, "What boundaries? You gonna ground me?" with a laugh in the shape of a dare. I shook my head. "I'm going to stop buying your runway," I said. "You can still fly if you want. You'll need your own fuel." We cleaned in a silence that wasn't peace. Ben packed the drone in careful pieces. Ava scribbled on a sticky note. Parts, screws, hope. I folded the tent with the muscle memory of a man who has done difficult things without applause. Tyler pretended to help by talking while not lifting. Megan posted a clip of sun through trees, captioned nothing because nothing was safer than honesty. Back home, I put Ben at the table with tiny screwdrivers and YouTube pulled up. "We'll order what we need tonight," I told him. "We'll do it right." He breathed out like a held cord. Ava lined up Ziplocs for parts. The house grew quiet in the way homes do when a decision finally occupies its chair. In the kitchen, I opened the Notes app where the family ledger lives and started a new list titled Boundaries. It looked like a maintenance checklist because all real promises do. I wrote the sentence again for myself. Respect and responsibility go together. I knew what it meant by the time I hit save. Tomorrow, I'd start turning off autopay. I'd return bills to the hands that created them. I'd move money out of accounts labeled for futures that refused basic present decency. Not revenge, calibration. Julia came in with 2 mugs. Her voice was small around the edges. "That was public," she said. "You embarrassed them." I shook my head. They embarrass themselves, I said. I just stopped financing it. She stared at me like I'd switched languages. They're kids, she said, reaching for that old gauze. They're almost adults, I said. They want the adult card? It costs money and respect. She put the mugs down. I don't want a war, she whispered. Neither do I said. I want a treaty. Treaties have terms. Ours starts with no more perks for people who call me nobody. I kept my tone like level ground. She closed her eyes, opened them, and nodded. Tiny, the way someone nods when they know winter is real. Before bed, I texted the family thread. New policy starting tomorrow. Privileges require respect. Phones, gas, subscriptions, and extras are paused until we reset how we treat each other. We'll talk at dinner. Love, Mark. The dots appeared, vanished. Tyler sent a skull emoji. Megan replied with LOL. Ben sent a thumbs up. Ava sent a sticker of a brick wall with a smile. Julia typed, erased, typed, then nothing. Silence is the first acknowledgement most families can afford. I put my wallet, my keys, and the sinking part of my heart in the bowl by the door. I checked windows, set the thermostat, shut off the ring light no one had unplugged, and turned the whiteboard to tomorrow. I slept like a man who had finally taken his hand off the lever he wasn't hired to hold. In the morning, the house would feel different, not louder, truer. Boundaries aren't fences that keep love out. They're thresholds that let it in without trampling the floors. Tomorrow, I'd start turning off the invisible machines I'd built. Tonight, I watched my son sort screws and my daughter label bags, and I let the quiet crown us. Because the point of no return isn't a cliff. It's a line you draw with a ruler, a pen, and your name. Morning smelled like coffee and resolve. I opened my laptop at the breakfast bar and started deleting my name from places it didn't belong. The first cancel felt like cutting a rope that had been burning my hands. Family phone plan. Pause and port. Insurance. Remove drivers I don't legally claim. Autopays. Gym. Streaming. Tyler's club fees. Megan's design subscriptions routed through my card because student discounts sometimes need an adult. Not this adult. Not anymore. I wrote a sentence on the whiteboard where everyone had to see it. Respect and responsibility go together. No respect, no perks. Then I underlined, together, the way a mechanic taps a part and says, here. This is where the noise lives. Administrative work is war fought with keystrokes. I set my coffee to the right of the trackpad and opened the ledger I call House. First, the phones. 5 lines. Mine, Julia, all 4 kids. The carrier rep chirped from a call center that pretended to be local with fake. How about that weather? I verified address. PIN. Last 4. The whole catechism. I'd like to transfer 2 lines to a new responsible party, I said. She perked. Happy to help, Mr. Grant. It took 30 minutes and 1 manager, but when the call ended, Tyler and Megan's numbers were unhooked from my autopay and floating in the dark between carriers until Julia claimed them. Service would continue for the day. The bill would not find me. Next, insurance. 2 used cars, Tyler's hatchback, Megan's faithful sedan with the tape-scarred bumper I keep pretended straight. I navigated the portal and removed my card from the policy that listed me as household member. There was a notes field. I wrote, biological parents to carry moving forward. I copied the confirmation PDF into a folder called Return to Sender. DMV renewals. I printed Tyler's and Megan's and laid them on the table in a tidy stack. On each I wrote Julia Scott and circled the due date like a teacher circling a missed answer. Subscriptions were a garden of vines. Gym memberships, streaming bundles, extra cloud storage for Megan's projects, a backup drive I'd rented when Tyler's laptop died, and I salvaged his files at midnight so he didn't lose his essays. Cancel, cancel, cancel. The services tried to bargain. 1 month free, we miss you already. But good boundaries don't haggle. I took screenshots of each page and filed them. Documentation is piece later. The college funds took the longest. 4 529s, 4 kids, 4 futures. I had opened one for each because fairness is a burden men like me wear like a belt. I stared at the 2 labeled for Tyler and Megan and felt the ache of good intentions that turned into unearned entitlement. I didn't drain them. I'm not here to salt the earth. But I halted contributions and locked the accounts from activity without a second signature. Then I wrote 2 letters, printed on actual paper with actual ink. Dear Tyler, Dear Megan, I opened these accounts when I believed we were a family rowing the same direction. That belief requires respect. Until that returns, no more contributions from me. If you and your parents wish to continue, I'll transfer custodianship to them. Love, Mark. I sealed the envelopes and taped them to the whiteboard under my sentence, where the light caught them like notice served. At 8:10, Julia walked in from a night shift haze, hair in a knot, kindness already queued up. She saw the board, the neat stacks, the printed confirmations. "What's all this?" she asked, too bright. I didn't make a speech. "I turned off what I fund for kids who call me nobody," I said. "Phones are yours and Scott's now. Insurance, too. Subscriptions. Gym." I paused the 529 contributions and wrote them letters. "We'll revisit when respect shows up." She went pale, then red. "You did this without asking me?" she said, and I hated that it was true and necessary. "I'm not asking you to agree," I said. "I'm informing you of my boundary." It wasn't a threat. It was a schedule. She tried smoothing. They didn't mean it. It was a bad day. They'll apologize. But the smoothing landed weak in a room full of receipts. I slid the DMV forms toward her. "Their father can handle this with you," I said. "I'm handing responsibility back." The sentence felt like returning a wallet I'd found, out of gas and too heavy for someone else's pocket. Tyler came down in his vintage hoodie that cost more than any sweater I own. He reached for his phone with the confidence of gravity. "Wi-Fi's weird," he said, meaning his signal was low because I'd moved the router password to a new piece of paper on the fridge with a blank under guest access. "Not weird," I said. "Restricted to members who speak to me with respect." He blinked, slow. "Mom," he said, like a summon. Julia stood in the doorway with a hand on her mug and said nothing. Megan appeared with ring light hair and a charging cable that has never known scarcity. "Is Netflix down?" she asked. "For you, yes," I said. "For people who called me nobody at a park, a lot of things are down." Tyler laughed the laugh that assumes bills are weather. Annoying, impersonal, paid by clouds. "Whatever," he said. "Scott can fix this." He meant his dad, the man with a talent for exits and a wallet that opens mostly for golf. "Great," I said. "He and your mom can arrange everything. I'll hand him what I've been carrying." I wrote a time on the board, 6 p.m. Family talk. At 9:32, an unknown number called. "This is Scott," the voice said, deep with a hangover of indignation. "Julia says you cut the kids off. We need to sort this out like men." Men. I looked at my piles, my folders, my neat stack of confirmation numbers. "I'm finally behaving like one," I said. "Come by at 6. Bring your checkbook." Scott arrived early in a fleece vest that said, "I manage other people's money, or at least pretend to." He hugged Tyler in the doorway like a camera was watching. He shook my hand too hard, the way some men try to replace competence with squeeze. We sat at the table. I slid the stack across like closing papers. "Here's what I've been paying monthly," I said, calm. "Phones, insurance, gas, extracurriculars, licenses, streaming, Adobe, the gym Tyler hasn't visited since February." I didn't raise my voice. I let the numbers do their own gravity. Scott skimmed, then stopped skimming. "The columns don't lie. $280 here, $190 there, 59ers times 5, a seasonal $150 for soccer, a quiet $400 spread over a year for Megan's courses." He sputtered into the part where people say, "I had no idea," because not knowing has become a luxury tier. "You did all this?" he said, and I nodded like a technician reading a gauge. "Why?" I could have said love. I could have said family. I said, "Because I thought respect would catch up." Then I pointed at the board. It didn't. Julia hovered, torn between defending peace and facing totals. Tyler leaned against the doorframe, pretending to broadcast boredom. Megan filmed the edges of a scene she didn't understand yet. Scott tried indignation again. "You can't just shut things off," he said. "They're kids." I kept my hands flat on the table. "They're almost adults," I said, "and adults run on consequences." I nodded at the letters. "Custodianship transfer is ready when you are. Or you can open your own. Either way, I'm out until the respect problem is solved." He flipped another page and found a line labeled 529 contributions. Paused. He bristled. "That's punitive." "No," I said. "It's proportionate." His mouth worked. He looked at Tyler. "You need to apologize to Mark," he said, like a man rehearsing a scene that came late. Tyler's eyes widened, then narrowed. "For what?" he ventured. Scott glanced at Julia. "For disrespecting the guy who's been covering your life." The room tilted. Even the refrigerator hummed a new pitch. Truth, when finally spoken by the right mouth, shifts a house's foundation. The backlash came like weather. First wind, then rain, then a sudden clear that feels like the sky admitting something. Tyler tried to storm. "You can't control me with money," he declared, which would have had more power if the gas tank he drove on weren't funded by someone he'd laughed off. "I'm not controlling you," I said. "I'm releasing you. You and your parents have the reins." Megan went for hurt. "So you never cared?" she asked, chin doing the wobble that had purchased too many exemptions. "Caring doesn't look like unlimited perks anymore," I said. "It looks like handing responsibility back." Julia looked at the stack and saw the shape of my invisible labor. I could see it land on her shoulders, the pink envelopes I had intercepted, the policy renewals I'd navigated, the camp forms that had appeared signed by magic. She sank into a chair, put her palm on the table, and said to Scott, "I didn't realize the totals." She hated admitting it. She did it anyway. "I smoothed it over," she said, voice raw. "I taught them they could talk like that and still get everything." It wasn't a confession for me. It was a mirror she finally looked into. Scott read the room, the way men who avoid fire finally feel heat. He put a hand flat on the paper and sighed the sigh of someone who's been using the emergency exit too long. "Okay," he said, and the word had weight. "I'll take the phones." He scrolled on his screen, already calling the carrier. "And insurance," he added, and it sounded like swallowing a bone. He pointed at Tyler. "You will pay your share with your weekend job before you spend $1 on sneakers." He pointed at Megan. "Adobe comes out of your birthday money until we figure a plan." Megan's eyes watered for the first honest reason I'd seen in months: fear of actual sacrifice. Tyler's shrug hardened into a kind of reluctant math. I can swing gas, he muttered. Maybe. Scott pressed. Not maybe, he said. Yes. Julia looked at me, then at the board. I see it, she said, quiet. I see what I did. She didn't cry. Nurses often save tears for empty rooms. She just nodded once, a nurse's nod, decision taking triage shape. We're keeping your sentence, she said, tapping the whiteboard where the ink had dried like a signed order. House policy. I spent the evening handing things back. I forwarded account numbers to Scott. I printed payment schedules. I emailed Megan the list of her subscriptions with instructions for how to update the card on file. I slid Tyler's club fee email to Scott with a subject line that read, Your call. I moved the router password from the fridge to a closed note labeled Family, Respect Required, and told everyone what it meant. I didn't raise my voice. I did not explain twice. The house sounded different by 9. No streaming chatter, no ring light buzz, just Ben and Ava at the table reconstructing a drone arm with a heat gun and tweezers, their focus a lighthouse cutting the fog. Tyler hovered, curiosity sneaking past pride, and asked Ben how he knew which wire was ground. Ben showed him the diagram. Megan sat, opened her sketchbook, and drew in pencil like someone who expects to earn her own markers. Julia loaded the dishwasher without performative sighs. Scott left with a folder he hadn't expected to carry. Before bed, I wrote 2 more lines on the whiteboard beneath the first. Privileges are earned monthly. Courtesy is daily. Then, smaller, because it was for me. Love isn't endless perks. My phone buzzed. A text from Scott. Didn't realize how much you were doing. Boundaries necessary. It wasn't friendship. It was adult language, finally. A minute later, Julia texted from the bedroom. I'm sorry I kept smoothing. I'm with you. I stood alone in the kitchen, the kind of alone that isn't abandonment, but air. I put my hand on the counter I'd installed last spring, felt the cool stone, and let the house recalibrate around a new voltage. In the morning, Tyler asked, not mumbled, Can I get the carrier number? Megan said, I emailed camp to ask about a payment plan. Ben held up the drone and grinned. Ava stuck a sticky note on the board. Respect just fuel. The sun came through the east window and found the whiteboard sentence like it had been waiting for this day. I wasn't triumphant. Men like me don't do parades. I was steady. I'd stopped pretending a free ride teaches love. I'd handed the bill to its owners and kept a seat at the table for anyone who wanted to pay with the right currency. Boundaries aren't revenge. They're the invoice you should have sent years ago, laid down flat, due upon receipt. The house didn't explode. It exhaled. When money stopped moving like unseen weather, you could hear the actual people again, their feet on the stairs, their voices measuring what they were owed against what they'd earned. That first morning after the shutdowns, Tyler came down slow, phone in his hand like a firework that never lit. My service says pending. Megan stood behind him, charger dangling like a stethoscope. The camp portal won't load, she said, as if the universe had glitched. I pointed at the whiteboard. House policy, I said. Respect, then privileges. I poured coffee, not a sermon. Remorse doesn't wear sackcloth. It wears manners it forgot it owned. Tyler tried good morning for the first time in months, the words stiff but dressed. Megan cleared breakfast bowls without irony. Not transformation, triage. The first bill to hit was the phone transfer. Julia spent her lunch break on hold with the carrier, while Scott texted screenshots of his new plan like trophies he hadn't wanted to buy. Tyler hovered, trying to calculate the cost of group chats he suddenly needed like oxygen. "Just give them back," he said to Julia, as if numbers were feelings. Julia looked at the totals and then at me. "They'll get numbers when they get respect," she said, and the sentence landed like a nurse clicking a syringe into place. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. By noon, the Wi-Fi guest password was still blank. Megan sat up at the dining table with pencils instead of her usual screen glow, sketching logos by hand like a designer from an older century. The lines steadied her. "Do you have tracing paper?" she asked, careful. I opened a drawer and handed her the roll I'd bought last year. She blinked. "You keep this?" "I keep a lot," I said. She nodded, small, the way people do when the inventory surprises them. Tyler's gas fund expired on schedule. He wanted to drive to a friend's house for a thing, which I assumed was code for people, and noises I'd meet later as problems. He shook the empty tube of quarters I keep for parking meters. "Any chance?" "There's always a chance," I said. "What's the plan to pay me back?" He glanced toward Julia, then away, layered calculations touching his face and leaving. "I get paid Friday," he muttered. $20 from chores, too." "Which chores?" I asked. He waited, then pointed at the list taped inside the pantry. Trash, floors, dishes, bathroom counters. He picked bathroom counters, like a man selecting a smaller hill to die on. "Done today," I said. "Then yes." Ben, methodical as a lab tech, rebuilt the drone arm during the lull, solder popping like quiet rain. Ava labeled bags with her block letters, then stuck a fresh note on the whiteboard. "We pay what we respect." She added a small star next to it, because a rule without a symbol is a sign without a door. Tyler watched the process from a safe corner, curiosity leaning over pride. "That wire is ground," Ben said, answering a question Tyler hadn't asked out loud. "Black to black. It's boring until it isn't." Tyler nodded. "Got it." He meant more than the wire. Remorse became visible the minute convenience left. Megan's camp wrote back about the balance due, instead of handing me a glowing screen with the practiced, "Can you just?" She approached Julia with a printed email and a math problem. "They have a payment plan," she said, voice thin. "Half now, half in 2 weeks." Julia looked to me, then back to her. "You and your dad cover it," she said. "If you want it, you value it." Megan's face flickered between injured and adult. Then she surprised me. "I can take a babysitting gig from Mrs. Chang," she offered, "and I'll sell the old tablet." The words were sandpaper, uncomfortable, productive. Tyler's club coach texted asking about spring fees. I forwarded it to Scott with the subject, "Your call." Scott replied faster than I expected. "He'll pay a portion. I'll match what he earns." Tyler read the thread over Julia's shoulder and swallowed something the size of a lesson. He came to me later, not quite meeting my eyes. "If I cover 90 from my job, can I still go to practice this week?" "If the trash and counters are done, yes," I said. "And you speak to me like I exist when other people are around." He nodded once, as if fitting that idea into his mouth to see if it could be chewed. Dinner that night felt like we'd moved the table 2 feet left and discovered a window. Fewer screens, more forks actually touching plates. Megan asked Ben about the drone project in a tone that belonged in families where people like one another on purpose. Tyler told Ava she could have the last roll. She blinked, suspicious, then took it and said, "Thank you." A small ceremony with big electricity. Julia watched it unfold, not smiling too big, just enough to register change without scaring it off. After dishes, The backlash made one last pass. Tyler tested the boundary like you test a fence you secretly hope is strong. "It's weird that money equals respect," he said, trying for a win on philosophy. "It's not about money," I said. "It's about who carries weight without being spit on." He lowered his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "I heard me at the park." That admission didn't fix anything. It opened a door to a room where fixing could happen. Not everything softened. There were scrapes. Megan cried in her room when Adobe bounced her login and sent her a cheery, "We miss you" email. Julia closed the door behind her and sat on the bed, not to rescue, just to witness. "We'll get it back when it matches your tone," she said. Megan nodded into a pillow, then wiped her face and reopened the sketchbook. Pencil, paper, patience. The triangle you can build a future on if you want one. Tyler raged quietly at the gas station when his card declined, and my 20 waited back home behind a completed task list. He drove back on fumes, hands at 10 and 2, and cleaned the bathroom counters with the seriousness of a man performing penance he could measure. "Can I borrow the shop vac?" he asked, surprising us both. He vacuumed his car without being asked. I watched through the window and allowed myself a private, small hope, the kind you don't feed too much in case it bites. Scott adjusted in his way. He texted receipts, carrier activations, insurance premiums, a screenshot of the first $5.29 contribution he'd made in months. "Don't make a thing of it," he wrote. I didn't. Adults doing what adults should do isn't a parade route. It's a lane finally being used by the right driver. The whiteboard became a working document instead of a museum. Under "Privileges are earned monthly," courtesy is daily, I added a column, "This week's earns." Ben listed drone fix. Ava wrote laundry, math test. Megan, after a long look, wrote portfolio sketches, babysitting Saturday. Tyler stared at the marker like it might burn him, then wrote gas money, bathroom, trash, vac. He capped the pen and set it down gently, the body language of someone returning a tool instead of dropping it where it makes a noise. A dinner with guests came up, Julia's sister again, plus the neighbor who delights in his snowblower. The old script would have played, kids breezing through, disrespect weathered into the wallpaper, Julia smoothing, me absorbing. This time, when the neighbor performed his generosity monologue, Tyler said, "Yeah, Mark fixed the carb on ours, so we didn't need to borrow." And it was such a small, startling sentence that the neighbor blinked twice and changed lanes. When it was time to clean up, Megan gathered plates. She didn't ask if we were doing dishes. She just did them. Julia handed me a dish towel and squeezed my arm, and it felt like gratitude that could stand without excuses. Ben's drone flew again the next afternoon, steady and sober, higher than before, because fear had been replaced by skill. Tyler asked for the controller with a look that included the question and the respect. Ben handed it over. "Line of sight," he reminded, smiling. Tyler nodded, flying slow, a boy in a borrowed sky he intended to pay back. Ava filmed it on my phone and narrated like a sportscaster. "Pilot shows restraint," she said. "House policy requires it." The quiet that followed wasn't punishment. It was order. We had fewer notifications and more conversations. The router password stayed on a folded card that unfolded for people who earned it. The phone plan belonged elsewhere, and our house felt lighter for not pretending a favor was a right. The $5.29 contributions from me remained paused with a sticky note on the folder. Revisit upon consistent respect. The note wasn't a threat. It was a gate. Julia started saying no in ways that signaled we'd remodeled the foundation. When Tyler tried to pull rank with, "Mom said later," Julia said, "Mom says now." When Megan attempted to triangulate with a soft, "I just thought maybe," Julia said, "Ask Mark directly," and then left the room, trusting that the room would hold. It did. One night, after the dishes and the math and the drone flight, Tyler stood in the doorway to the garage while I rotated tires on Julia's car. He had his hands in his hoodie like he wanted to keep them from doing something dumb. "I was a jerk," he said, selecting honesty like a wrench that actually fits. "At the park." I spun the lug, clicked the torque wrench, and nodded once. "You were," I said. He waited for the sermon that didn't arrive. "I'm not asking for, like, a speech," he added. "Just, I get it. Money isn't love. But love isn't, unlimited perks." The corner of my mouth moved. "House policy," I said. He breathed out, a laugh that wasn't defensive for once. "Yeah. Megan came to me with a calendar and a budget. If I cover half Adobe and half Camp, can I turn the Wi-Fi back on for my laptop while I'm working?" she asked, precise. "Yes," I said. "If you can also turn off the ring light at dinner without me asking." She grinned, then caught it, then let it exist. "Deal," she said. We shook like business partners who intend to keep their word. Ben and Ava moved easier. They didn't have to pick a side anymore because there was only the side with rules that didn't bend to avoid adult discomfort. Ben's shoulders lowered an inch. Ava added, "Family game night" to the whiteboard, then wrote in tiny letters, "No phones." Nobody argued. We played a board game badly and laughed like we had purchased the right to enjoy one another. My conclusion arrived without fanfare, the way engines settle after a tune-up. I'd confused love with service that never invoices. I'd built an invisible machine and then resented being treated like a machine. The new order asks everyone to see the cost of warmth and offer heat back. Not with money alone, though money is a language we all speak and too few own, but with respect that doesn't vanish when an audience appears. I kept my boundaries in writing. No contributions to futures that sneer at the present. No auto-pays for people who auto-dismiss the hand that pays. No smoothing over behavior that would get them fired from a job or removed from a friend's life. I also kept my door open. Apologies accepted. Growth matched with trust. Privileges restored when they're treated like privileges. Love without respect is slavery. I won't be that kind of servant again. If I stay, and I am staying, it's under terms written on the whiteboard, signed in monthly courtesies, and paid forward in the currency that makes a house work. Eyes that meet, voices that soften, hands that help. And the quiet sentence we live now without saying it out loud every hour, respect and responsibility go together.